Alright, so I just got my hands on this MBS Comp 90 setup, and this is an old used setup that I believe would have been from around 2008 through 2010-ish, is my best guess. And I just got this on a local classifieds listing and ran and picked it up. And I was super excited to see this because... check out this. This has got the MBS Valkyrie Trucks, which I really only just learned about in the last year. And there's not even a whole lot of pictures of these trucks out there. So I don't know how long they were around, but I don't think it was very long. But also I was excited to have a setup with a brake, and it was nice to find a setup that's got another pair of decent bindings on it. So these bindings aren't a ratchet strap like our Ground Industries bindings are, but they are locking bindings and are quite a bit nicer than just the silly Velcro straps that are on the cult board. So I just want to make this video real quick, just while I'm just exploring this and taking a look at it for the first time, because I just got it home basically, and I want to take the wheels off and take a look at the trucks and just, you know, go over it really quick for a minute. So my first impression of this thing, standing on it and feeling it and looking at these trucks, this is completely different. This is a entirely different thing than what this Colt 90 was. So here's the Colt 90. Yeah, but the difference between this and this is just tremendous. They're not even related. So, like, for example, if you look at these trucks here, and you can see just how good the finish is on these. It's definitely not the same sand casting process that produced these things here. This is just raw and rough, and it doesn't look great. The precision's not great. The casting quality's not great. But this is it looks great, and it feels great, and I've got tons more confidence in the strength of this thing compared to the strength of this thing, just from the quality that I can see alone. Anyway, it's just very apparent that this is just a different scope of product than that cheap board there. So, what do I want to do? I think the first thing I want to do is, I'm actually going to take off. Let's just go ahead and straight and take off the truck there. So far, my only complaint that I've seen is the fact that it doesn't use the same 8mm hardware that becomes standard on skates, on longboards. And that's might be understandable a little bit, but it's something they could have done, and they could have known at the time. I just don't think they're bothering with the fact that they're even attempting to share an ecosystem with a different but related sport. All right. All right. So let's take this down here. All right, now that's just silly. It doesn't sit on the ground. I need to take the wheels off too. So I believe this one has, I'll check whether it has 12 or 10mm axles here. .5-ish. So yeah, 10mm axles. So that is a bit of a surprise. The few places I've seen mention these Valkyrie trucks are old kiteboarding forums, and if you're jumping around with a kite, you can be jumping pretty high and coming down pretty hard on 10mm axles. That's pushing it a little bit, I think. Interesting. So it looks like the kingpin has to come off because there's a nut embedded in the plastic base plate here, which is got a metal base plate on top of that. So let's take that apart. I haven't explained what these are, what's different about these trucks yet, but maybe you can already see some of what's going on here. Oh, okay, come on. Just stuck in that bushing. Okay. And then that comes off. Interesting. Then this comes out. Oh, and it just spins out like that. Okay, this is what I'm interested to see here. The condition of these pivot cups. So these are actually still in good shape. The ones on the Comp 90, they seem to be made of the same material as the Colt 90 pivots. But these ones are not cracked. They're still in great shape. All right, so you probably have a pretty good idea of how this is working now, I'm supposing. But yeah, basically you've got, instead of a bushing and a pivot, you've got two pivots. And so in a way, I would explain this like an early queen pin truck. So, you know, you've got the Ronin trucks, where you've got the queen pin right here. Well, this has got a queen pin type of scenario, but it's just a second pivot. It can't move up and down and absorb shock like a queen pin can, but it's doing essentially the exact same thing. You're just following the RKP style, and you're supporting it on the other side of the bushing as well. And another truck like that would be a queen pin truck would be the Valkyrie Trucks, like the Voxter. It's not exactly a queen pin, but it's using a bushing, another bushing instead of as the pin. And you've also got the Fire Trucks. So these, you might say, is probably even closer to the Fire Trucks design, which had it was like a bolt-on bracket that would hold this second pin in place. So you can imagine this if you take this pin off here. If you just joink, imagine it's just like that. It's basically, in this configuration, it's a reverse kingpin truck, right? This is just a reverse kingpin hanger, pivot, bushing, axle, except it's got a ton of axle offset. So the amount of axle offset it's got is the same as what you'd get with like a TKP. So it's just an RKP with a lot of axle offset and a queen pin. And that's essentially what's going on there. Now I want to test one other thing while I got this here. I want to see how straight this axle is. Not too bad. Try the other side. Yeah, it's not too bad. It's more than I would like, but it is. That's twice as straight as the Colt 90 axle. Yeah, you'd like it to be straighter, but it's not a huge deal. Yeah, not sure what I want to say about that. Obviously, when I do a breakdown of these trucks, I'm going to be going into a lot more detail here. Okay, so that goes like that. Right. So the construction of that is pretty interesting. So yeah, I find it really interesting that where the pivot cups go, it's open so that this can come in and out, right? Otherwise, you'll never get the hanger on and off if you can't pull the pivots out. So they're open on this side. But I find it really interesting that they made it so they're open on the inside rather than they're open on the top. Because if they were open from the top, you could bolt down in the kingpin on the bushings, and now that's holding it down in place. And you don't really even need anything else on top. It can remain open on the top, and I imagine it wouldn't come out. Even if, so you could, yeah. And that would make it a lot easier to just stick this on and off. So, yeah, interesting. This piece here is extremely lightweight. And this piece here is actually, I I'd say it's about 40% heavier than this thing, which is pretty crazy. Yeah, and the casting quality just seems really, really good. So there's a lot to be impressed by, and there's a lot to be confused by. And anyway, here's the sticker logo thing. Yep, MBS Vector twin pin channel truck. So twin pin. I think with the modern vernacular, it'd be acceptable to call this a queen pin. That's kind of what the idea was going after. So there we go. You can see it's faded quite a bit. The board itself has yellowed a bit as well. That all looks really good. I think the only other thing I wanted to do today is I want to take a look inside this this wheel. Okay. So this hub is definitely even nicer than the Colt hub. Take a look at that. Oh, found the hole. It's right here. It's just a nice big tear right along the inside there. So I think that should be patchable, at least for the short term. That should save me some effort. These bushings, or these bearings, look, you can still see the original oil is still nice and clear and translucent. So yeah, this hasn't been ridden in any dirt. Shame for a dirt board not to see dirt, right? All right, so I'll take a look at this brake system real quick. So it's just a cable brake, right? And it just works like a normal cable brake does. Here's the springs that pull it away from the wheels. And what's interesting is it rubs pretty aggressively on this side and not at all on this side. So it's imbalanced. And I believe there's these black blocks under here. And I believe that's what tensions the spring, because this side has got no tension, this side's got tons of tension. But let's take a look at the brake itself, the rotor. So this the brake rotor is just an aluminum disc that's it's just bolted onto the wheel hub with the 5 bolts using a spacer. Just a little aluminum spacers, it looked like, to just give it a little bit of a standoff. And it looks like it's the same bolts that bolts the hub together. So that's interesting. I'm not sure if I would prefer separate bolts or the same bolts. Don't know. I suppose you'd have to have a little bit of a experience with it. But yeah, I'm excited to have brakes. I didn't mention in the previous videos about the mountain board and the riding, but it was really, really, really hard to find terrain to ride on because there's only a real band of speed you want to be going on the different terrain, which means there's only a specific slope that correspond with that different speed, as it's a gravity sport. And pushing doesn't really work if you're doing bindings, which sucks. So that limits the terrain you can ride in one side. And if you don't have a brake, that means steeper terrain is cut off as well. So with a brake, now you can run on steeper terrain, and when you need to, you can just slow down into the speed where you need to be for the terrain you're on, and you can continue riding. An example would be on a lot of the runs we were going, down steep, and then it'd be nice and up and downy, and then it goes down again, and then it'd be flat for a while. So if we had a motor, we could do with the flat stuff, but if we had brakes, we could go to the steep stuff and ride the steep sections, connecting all the smaller sections that we could run. And so we could take segments and using the brake, connect them into continuous runs, and it would be a lot more fun. So that's why I'm interested in the brake. So there we go. That's my first impressions. Oh look, it's got a number. It's a little plaque. Anyway, so that's my first impressions. I'm really excited to do a real deep dive and explore this more in depth, these trucks. And so expect a video on that coming up pretty soon. I might have a couple others I want to do first, but for sure I'm excited. And there we go. Longboard technology, over and out.